Well. Not only are we back on Friday, we are on time. So I think we're to a good start.
Right.
Well, I was kind of up to a good start. Then somebody fucked up my DoorDash order, so I'm a little grumpy. So, yeah, been a hell of a week for me. Let's just get started. My name is Micah Curtis.
And I'm Alex Baldwin, and yeah, it's been a hell of a week for me, too.
Yeah. Welcome to Micah and the Hatman on politics, regardless. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Just to warn you guys, I am admittedly it's grumpy Micah again. I've had a shitty week. I haven't got anything done. My depression's been fucking with me again. It's just been not a good week to be Micah Curtis. We'll just put it that way. And then finally, the kid who fucking brought my DoorDash order, because I ordered enough pizza to last me the weekend while I cleaned this place up, he fucked up my order. Like, he didn't get the fucking dip right. He gave me, like, nacho cheese instead of marinara sauce for my breadsticks. And then didn't give me the soda I ordered either. And then when I said, hey, you need to go get this, I paid for it, he doesn't fucking come back. So, yeah, not too pleased. Not too pleased at all. And I'm already getting a notification that YouTube is being fucky. So, right out of the gate, apologies if there is any lag. If you do get lag, please hit F5 on your keyboard. That's not a joke to get you to close the window. That's the refresh button. That will probably solve most issues. So,
or if you're a Mac heathen like me, Command R.
Yes, if there are any mods in the chat, Hardboiled or Brainbox, if people start saying, I'm getting lag, please remind them to hit that refresh key. Okay, so, let's go ahead and get started. So, not really a central theme so much this week, just a couple of interesting topics to discuss. One of which we're going to touch on very briefly. A new coalition government has been formed in Israel after an election, and Benjamin Netanyahu will no longer be the prime minister of Israel. He's been the prime minister for over a decade. He's been a very good prime minister, in my opinion. But it seems to me, and I feared that this would probably happen. I don't know if we talked about it really, but we kind of, Hatman and I kind of feared that, me especially, that because of the controversy surrounding some, favors and done for political favors done for other stuff, nothing too bad, just like cigars basically. But the controversy that was brought, I know it was so dumb, remember? It was one of the dumbest things to flip out about ever. Like holy fucking shit.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You're just talking about like certain favors done, and then you went to cigars, and I'm just like, there's a Bill Clinton joke here, isn't there?
True, and that is not a small number. That's a very big number. Sister Facts, what the fuck? What does he say? He says, the money, hardcore mecha, and all the DLC on Steam or on Switch. I will look into that. Holy shit, thank you, dude. Anyway, but between that and between some people in Israel honestly thought that Netanyahu was too soft on Palestine, which Oh, whoa. Not the response I would have expected. But a brand new prime minister will be sworn in when the new coalition government gets started. His name is Naftali Bennett. He was the Minister of Defense under Netanyahu back in 2015, and this guy is a fucking hawk. He is further to the right. He is a true nationalist for Israel. He does not believe in a two-state solution. His solution for the West Bank, or for Gaza rather, is that he's going to offer a quote-unquote form of amnesty to Palestinians who don't want to be Palestinian anymore. Basically, that completely reject everything that Palestine stands for. We're going to bring them in. And then from there, they're basically going to annex the West Bank. And they're going to root out Hamas and deal with them. That is what he wants to do. It's what he's wanted to do for a long time. He does not believe in a two-state solution. He believes in a unified Israel. Yeah. Now, what's been funny about this is that before people started digging into his past, you had people like Bernie Sanders saying that they were looking forward to working with this guy. This guy isn't going to put up with your bullshit.
Nope.
This is what we would call a hardliner. Some people would even go to say he's hawkish. He's, very military focused because he was a military man, So when it comes right down to it, this guy, be prepared for a prime minister of Israel that's done playing nice. Because Netanyahu, in my opinion, was a phenomenal prime minister. He stuck it out through a lot of crazy controversies and managed to get a lot done during his tenure as prime minister. But, at some point, the Israeli people were going to get sick of the rocket attacks, going to get sick of all the bullshit that keeps coming from Gaza because Iran keeps funding them. They're just going to try to cut it off at the source.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had a feeling whenever this most recent rocket attack started, I'm like, this is going to be the beginning of the end. Because this has just gone on way too long. And at some point, Israel's just going to put their foot down. And they're just going to be like, we're done with you. You're out. You're done. We're getting rid of you. Now, the downside to this is that this could obviously trigger something with Hezbollah and could trigger something bigger with Iran, which is part of the reason why Netanyahu would continuously agree to ceasefires. He would basically slap them and then say, all right, you get the message. If you don't stop, we're going to continue, and more people will die. And then Hamas stopped almost every time. Well, this guy doesn't give a shit. So it goes without saying, like, they're already branding Naftali far right. He's not far right. He's not a supremacist or anything like that. He's just further to the right than Netanyahu. So be prepared for the smears on Naftali Bennett to be basically that he's a racist, and all the slurs and shit that they said with Benjamin Netanyahu will be worse under this guy. They are absolutely going to be worse towards him. And then more than likely a right-wing government in the United States will get elected, and then all of those nasty words aren't going to be coming from the government because we'll likely support him. So, couple more donations came in. Changus came in, throws in a bucket, says, damn, this new PM is fucking hardcore. And Chaos Sonic throws in a bucket and says, with the Bernie support at first, maybe this will turn into a socialist against him, if only. No, Bernie will quickly retract what he said. I have no doubt of that. So yeah, needless to say, it's going to be an interesting time in Israel for the next few years. That goes without saying.
Yeah, to say the least.
Second topic of the day, I actually did an article on this on RT, but I want to go ahead and kind of reiterate what I talked about there. So Florida has, despite the salacious title of mine, Florida has basically, or not basically, they have banned transgender women, basically biological men who are transitioning into, who are transitioning or have transitioned, from competing against biological women. Which, yeah, I mean, I've said this for years. According to the science, if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna play that game, if we're gonna play pure science, if we're not gonna play identity politics, which is what the left says they want to do for everything else, if we're gonna play that game, men are men, women are women, and we are a sexually dimorphic species. And DeSantis has signed into law exactly that. It's like, and he flat out said, he's like, I'm striving for equality in sports. And I loved how he turned the left's own language against him. He's like, he says it is not fair for a biological man to compete against a biological woman in these sports. If both are performance athletes, the man will win almost every single time. And he goes, it's not fair. It's not fair to the girls who are busting their asses to be the best in their sport, and then these girls, these boys who think they're girls, let's be honest, come in and then just stomp them. Like it's just that's not fair. And he's like one thing that I noticed about this, and this is sort of what inspired the article I wrote, was I noticed that he was mentioning a lot, or speaking from the perspective as a parent. And I've had some discussion with people in the Discord server. If you haven't become a patron yet, of course, link is in the description. You can become part of that Discord server. Become, contrary to what some people would say, part of the discussions we have in there. Yeah, I'm still mad about that. The one discussion that I was having was, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of pushes from the left, pro transgender. Some are pushing like pro map, basically pro pedophile shit as well. And I've had some people, come up to me and talk to me and say, hey, how is this ever going to stop? And I said, you got to understand something. There are what I consider to be what I would call cultural lines. Basically speaking, is that Americans are willing to live and let live to a point. That point is the front door. Basically, and this is all, this is oddly enough one thing that a lot of people are critical of the right for, is that they're very standoffish. Like they don't care provided you don't fuck with their family. Well, what this does is this fucks with the family. Imagine being a dad and having one of your daughters being a phenomenal athlete, and she's a track and field star. I'm gonna use that because my sisters were both track and field stars, and one of my nieces too. She's a cross country runner. Imagine if, your daughter's a great hurdler, one of the best in the state, and you go to the state meet, and there's scouts there from several different universities looking to give scholarships, and then all of a sudden, Edwina comes to the line and is a giant buff dude with a wig on. How are you gonna feel as a father when your daughter can't compete like that against Edwina? That, that's a line. That's a line that a lot of fathers, when they see that, that's gonna piss them off. She'd be like, that's my kid, and she just didn't get a fair shake. This is bullshit. It's starting to hit the home. And the home is a cultural line. The home is a place where people, when you start to fuck with it, they're going to start to, all of a sudden, it's get off my lawn. It's like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino. Suddenly there's an old man with an M1 Garand out on his lawn looking like he's going to eat your face. But that's something that needs to be understood. You know, I've always been of the opinion that the political left likes to push too much. They push and they push and they push. They constantly push the envelope. You know, they'll talk about, you know, it's like legalizing gay marriage. Okay, that's fine. You know, and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to government, the government should be out of marriage anyway. So if it's just going to be a contract between two people about, like, co-ownership of things, which is basically all a marriage should be when it comes to the law, when it comes to man's law, then whatever, you know? But the instant you start acting like boy and girl don't exist, and the instant you start pushing these things, the instant you start pushing this junk science on people, that's going to be the instant that people are going to draw a line and say, you cross this line, I'm going to fuck you up. And that's exactly what's going on. So the schools weren't going to do, if the schools aren't going to do anything about it, people are going to go to the government, you know? And I'm generally of the opinion that the government should stay out of things as much as possible. So I'm not really saying whether or not I agree or disagree with this law. At least on a political perspective. As an uncle to several nieces, I want them to have a fair shake. And yeah, if those schools aren't going to do anything about it, I would go to the state too. You know? It's not, in my opinion, it's not really a political thing. It's my kid ain't getting a fair shake, and if you're not going to do anything about it, okay, I'm gonna get somebody with a bigger stick. So I'm not really surprised this happened. Ron DeSantis is standing very firm in this too, because the NCAA has said, "Oh, we're going to start pulling events from Florida," which I think the Rose Bowl is the big one, right? I don't follow NCAA sports very much. Okay, so the Rose Bowl wouldn't be in Florida. He's like, I don't give a shit. And he's like, let them do it. And he basically said, our kids in this state are more important than a couple tournament events. You know? And he's taking the stance that, in my opinion, a lot of governors haven't done so far. A lot of them have avoided this. You know, like they'll veto this sort of a ban. I think one state recently, didn't it come back with a 2/3 majority, which basically means, yeah, fuck your veto.
Yeah.
So I think that DeSantis is basically showing kind of the tone and temperament that needs to, you know, come from the right, is that there is a Rose Bowl's in California. The Orange Bowl is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't follow the sports unless people are getting punched in the face. So point being that DeSantis is basically one of the guys that is leading the charge of how you're supposed to deal with these sorts of things. And like I've said before, you know, him and Tim Scott are either one of them my pick for 2024. Trump can stand back and be consigliere. Servant throws in a bucket and says, I can say this, there are a lot of families not going to put up with the DFL here having to cave to the left by the end of the year. Florida is making them take notice that we don't have to take this anymore. It's true enough. So yeah, I think that this will stand. I don't see him backing down. DeSantis is a different breed, man. I think I said this last week. Like him and why am I forgetting the name of the governor of Texas?
Abbott. Greg Abbott.
Greg Abbott. He and Greg Abbott are taking their states. They're trying to see who can have the better state. You know, I like both of them. So, and I like
a friendly competition. Who has the better state?
On top of that, I've visited both states. I loved being there. So yeah, it's good stuff.
The only thing I don't like Florida is the fucking weather.
I love the weather down there.
I can't stand it. Too humid.
See, I don't mind it. I don't mind sweating a bit. So.
Not for me. You can have it.
Well, it gave me an excuse to jump in the ocean.
Oh, there you
and
go.
that was fun. I went starfish hunting.
Ooh,
So
very nice.
yes, I ended up one time that I went, I actually didn't end up catching a starfish. I got a horseshoe crab,
Hmm.
which was awesome.
So you come to a Carolina beach and they'll be all over the fucking place early in the fucking morning.
What, horseshoe crabs?
Yeah.
Oh, they're cool. I just I picked it up and scared my sisters with it. It was great.
Big old kabuto.
Yep. I just walk around with it. I'm like, you must spawn more overlords. Oh God. Okay, Hatman.
Yes.
So over the last week, there's been some coof news, some silly coof
Yep.
news, with some emails. But I thought that this one was a better pick as a topic. People are gonna be mad. We're not gonna be talking about Fauci stuff. We knew he was a flip flopper, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
But now the lab leak theory seems to be gaining some more traction to the point that China, as this gets more traction today, went out and accused the United States of being the ones with some sort of toxic lab or some bullshit. So, Hatman, what's going on with this?
So so yeah, now as more research is being done into the origins of COVID, and really it was like one scientist came out and said, "Hey, there are some discrepancies with this thing that makes me think like this was not just a natural occurrence." For example, how in the hell could it be first found in Wuhan if the virus came from the bats of Yunnan, which is about 1,500 kilometers away? Like that shit doesn't fucking make sense.
Right.
How would a naturally occurring virus evolve to optimally target humans with its proteins? How could the virus have a unique protein folding known as the furin cleavage site, which other beta coronaviruses don't? It sounds like something that had been cooked up in a laboratory setting, or at least had been cultivated and allowed to evolve within a laboratory setting. And then you also have some scientists from that Wuhan lab coming down with a mysterious illness. I think it was like 3 or 4 of them in November of 2019, which correlates to about the time that they believe that people first started becoming sick with COVID. So all of this now, like the evidence is starting to mount up that maybe there is more to this lab leak theory than initially thought. And even if it wasn't, a biological weapon, it could still be a lab that was isolated and cultivated within a lab and still managed to escape because, let's be real, China's health standards are shit. Chinese quality. What the hell can you expect? But anyway, it's funny now because before, around this time last year even, you would get banned on social media sites for claiming that COVID came out of a lab because it was a dangerous conspiracy theory. And American journalists have been saying, oh, that's nothing but a conspiracy theory. Trust the science here. Trust the science. And now all of a sudden you've got people, and Fauci even as one of them, and even his emails say, like, yeah, there's probably something to the lab leak theory. But whereas before it was a dangerous conspiracy theory, now it's like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And Biden is even ordering an investigation into the origins of COVID. So this tells me 2 things. One, the whole China virus thing tainted the politics of, and yes, the politics of determining an origin for COVID so much to the point where this sort of hypothesis was just not up for discussion because of who was talking about it, which was Trump and other right-wingers. And two, if this stuff was being censored for supposed disinformation, then Jesus Christ, we've got more than just a fucking virus problem on our hands. We've got a serious problem with what the fuck we determined to be disinformation, especially so early into the fucking game. I mean, people like to say, trust the science. The science is settled. Science doesn't usually settle on things. If it settles on something, then it becomes a law. Otherwise, no, it doesn't. It changes and evolves with testing and hypotheses. That's how it works. That's the nature of the method. So, fucking A. Like, I hope to God now we can actually make some fucking progress on finding out where the hell this thing came from, and if it did actually come out of a Chinese lab, which I do believe that it did, then maybe we can fucking hold China responsible for it. Maybe we can hold them accountable for once. And if we won't, then hopefully the international community will. Because Jesus Christ, this shit brought the world to its knees.
Yeah.
And if China's at fault, they deserve to fucking pay for it.
And I say sanction the shit out of them.
Absolutely.
Like, just economic sanctions out the fucking wazoo. Like, just no more. No more bullshit. We're done. Just stop this shit.
Well, fuck that shit.
Well, and that would probably be the most, like, in my opinion, apt punishment. The COVID virus basically fucked the entire economy at its height, you know? And, you know, what's not helping, of course, is Biden is basically, again, just like with Obama, the economy is limping in a recovery. It's not actually recovering. You know, we're at where we're at now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, in a competent government, we would we would after the investigation we would sanction them into hell, and then that would be the end of it. And we would say to the rest of the world leaders, I would advise you do the same thing. But I don't see it happening. Not under this president.
No, too weak on it. Crystal Hydra in the chat says we need to know what other viruses China has. For all we know, they've got the goddamn G virus. And you know what? Yeah, and the fact that this is a theory that has some prominence to it now is fucking scary. I think I even hypothesized very early on when we started talking about COVID that it might have been some kind of biological weapon that was intended for the Hong Kong protests to shut them down, because that was going on at the time. And if that's the fucking case, then yeah, China needs to be fucking dealt with. If they're willing to unleash a goddamn pandemic to maintain their interests and shut down protests in territories that they have dubious claim to, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. I think you lose national sovereignty over that shit.
National sovereignty loss comes after very specific means, but then again, they're currently in the midst of, you know, putting Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. So they
genocide is one of them.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, they're guilty of that, but of course nobody wants to fucking say anything.
No.
So in conclusion, fuck China.
Yeah, fuck China and
China's asshole.
And by extension, fuck John Cena.
Yeah.
I'd say it to his face, but I can't see him.
Yeah. Damn shame, that.
Alrighty, Hatman. We have come to our final program, or our final part of the program. You are being a little staticky, just as a heads up.
Yeah, it's probably. Actually, hang on. I'm gonna refresh right quick. See if that helps things.
Okay. We shall await the return of the Hatman. But anyway, while there we go.
Okay. Is this better at all?
For now, it is.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Holds
So,
up.
um, the last segment of the show, we've ever since January 6th, we have been doing this segment called the Big Think, or we're now going to call it the Big Think. Basically, what to be thinking about whenever it comes to civics, whenever it comes to government, whenever it comes to things like that, because we don't want. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with nationalism. There's nothing wrong with loving your country. However, nationalism should not be without purpose. Nationalism should not be without education. So, we are going to take it upon ourselves to educate you guys on why certain issues are a problem, why they make no sense, so on and so forth, and how some of these issues seek to undermine the way that the Founding Fathers intended the United States to be. So, this week's topic is critical race theory in schools. What do? So, Hatman, what do?
What do is honestly a kind of a complicated question. So as some of you might know, I talked about it before. I used to work in education, as in I was responsible for editing test questions that were for standardized tests in the state of North Carolina. So I've been on the inside as far as education in North Carolina goes. And on top of that, I originally went to college to be a teacher, and I dropped out of that program. So I've seen firsthand what critical race theory can do and how it's being implemented in at least schools in this state. And it's not pretty. So when I was on track to be a teacher, one of the first things that they taught us was that you do have to treat students differently. And I figured, okay, naturally, everyone's got their own quirks. Everyone's an individual. Yes, it's got to be a case by case basis. But they were like, no. You have to treat them differently based on their marginalization status. I don't remember if that was the exact term they used, but that's effectively what they meant. There was a book that we had to read called Teaching with Poverty in Mind. I don't remember who the authors were, but that was the title of the book. In that book, they straight up said any kind of punishment directed towards a student for acting out in class, lashing out in any way, violently even, should not be given. You should not punish them. Because if it's coming from a student that is from an impoverished background, they're simply acting out in a rageful manner against a system of oppression or a hierarchy of oppression. Yeah, they can punch another fucking student in the face, but how dare you send them to in-school suspension, or how dare you call somebody to have them removed from the class, because that's just an expression of rage because they're poor. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And of course, they tried to imply that the only poor students that you're going to have are black students, because what's critical race theory without a little bit of racism?
Oh yeah.
But it goes a little bit further than that. What we know as critical race theory basically postulates two things. One, that white supremacy is part of the fabric of the social structures of the Western world. It's more or less the base of, if you know, like Marxist theory, for example, it's the base of which the superstructure is built upon. And two, that if you want true equality, and it's not really framed as equality, it's equity, as in you do have to tip the scales in order to achieve equilibrium in a way, which makes no sense what fucking soever. But in order to do that, you have to completely dismantle or remove every element of white supremacy from society. Now, this naturally, this is going to sound to any kind of rational person, like, oh, well, this is reasonable because you want to remove racism. Racism is a cancer and a white supremacist move because we were naming it after milk, which white people drink and which is white. Does that make sense? No. No, it doesn't fucking make sense. But it made enough sense to be published. It made enough sense that other people agreed with it. It made enough sense to where proponents of critical race theory find validity in it. And therein lies the fucking problem. Because these people find validity in it, you're not allowed to criticize it. You're not allowed to say, hey, does anyone else think this is completely fucking retarded? Does anyone else find a problem with the basic merits of such an insinuation? Well, no. No, because you're questioning the lived experiences, which are basically just personal anecdotes, which, if you know anything, they're worthless as evidence. You're questioning the lived experiences of individuals. You are questioning people where you shouldn't be. As a white person, you are not allowed to ask these kind of questions. You are not allowed to challenge these kinds of ideas. Your role in critical race theory is to sit down, shut up, and surrender. That's what you fucking do. You feel guilty. You give your time, your money, and all your effort to upholding these sorts of ideals, and then maybe they won't come after you next. Now, that's the worst case scenario of all this. You know, if you're bad at it, then of course they're going to come after you. They're going to call you racist, whatever. Teaching this to children is where we start to draw the line. And here comes the hard part. It is difficult to remove it from education because something as simple as saying that the United States has a history of racism or has legislated racism in the past is not coming from critical race theory. That is a historical fact. But that shit can be swept away with anti-CRT legislation. So this is where we have to get the scalpels out. We do have to cut with some sort of precision here. We have to look for...
The racism requires malice. It requires a hatred based on someone else's skin color or the belief that one race is inherently superior to the other. How different is the definition of racism used by critical race theory?
So that is basically, you have to have institutional power. Racism is not something that you can, it's not individualized. It's part of a structure.
It's a group sin.
Person, yeah, as a white person, you contribute to racism through being white and through benefiting from being white. It's you cannot be racist, you just are racist, which, let's be fair, this whole redefinition of shit is a way to justify bigotry against majority groups and then say, well, I still have the moral high ground because at least I'm not racist, at least I'm not sexist, at least not what the fuck ever, because they use it for all the fucking things. That's part of intersectionality.
Yep.
But it's hard to cut out because you have to be really specific with it. Sometimes it doesn't reveal itself. Like, once you get to intersectionality stuff, yes, of course, that's right on its face there. But sometimes it's a lot more subtle than that. If you got kids, I would check up on what the hell their assignments are. Do homework. Check up on what the hell their assignments are. Do homework.
Remember one episode you called Steven Crowder an idiot? Yeah, I did, because I thought that section he was doing was very, very bad. Also remember one video you were made talking about Milo Yiannopoulos, Steve Ben Shapiro, and Crowder. Just wondering what your updated opinions are on them nowadays. Crowder, I am of the opinion that Crowder is concerned with Crowder. He's doing the same thing that a lot of conservatives do. whenever whenever they start being successful. They wall off, and they're worried about them. Not really worried about the movement so much, you know. And but they'll talk about the movement when it suits them. I know a lot of people who do that are conservatives. It's just the conservative attitude. And granted, he's about to be a father. Whenever you got a kid in the world that coming into the world, that's going to be your top priority. My thing is this: just be honest about it. Don't try to sell me that you're a movement leader, and then at the same minute act with selfishness. Like, go fuck yourself at that point. You're not in it for the movement. You're in it for you. You know. Milo Yiannopoulos, he's kind of at a point where he is more worried about getting attention than he is actually any sort of political discussion. So he's definitely fallen by the wayside. Shapiro I still like, because he has found, in my opinion, the balance of basically taking care of your kids, taking care of your family, but still being concerned about the movement and trying to make the movement better, you know? And a lot of the business moves that he makes are for that exact purpose. So I have a much higher opinion of him. You know, wanting to get into film, wanting to do those sorts of things. That's a wise move. That's one that needs to be made, you know? Alternatives need to be made. Making 50 videos about Brie Larson isn't going to move the culture anywhere, Jeremy Hambley, you fat fuck. So yeah, when it comes right down to it, there needs to be, you know, I think that Shapiro is the model to follow, you know? What if you're successful, your family will be taken care of, you know? Mm-hmm. Like there's no, like, you start closing off those walls to other people, other like-minded people that want the country to get better. You don't really end up looking like a hypocrite, you know? And I'm not a fan of that. Not a fan of it at all. Any person that I've ever met that at one minute says they're about a cultural movement, and the next minute it's me, they're fakes, they're frauds, they're posers. Fuck them. Yeah, I have a button for that.
Fuck them.
So yeah. Now onto the Q&A. So, let's see here. Servant wants to know. List of assets targeted Koof tanks to FOIA now include Fauci, the media, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Twitter. Let's see here. Most of the Democrats, some rhinos, and the CCP. Suddenly I'm okay with not just sanctions, but all for Nuremberg 2.0. It's a little extreme. Am I a bit more heated than need be? Yes. Because like the evidence, like Fauci's emails showed that he was a flip-flopper, and that the Democrats have connections at big tech. Shit we already knew.
Yeah, we knew this.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to hold them responsible for every lost life at all.
Yeah.
I think that would be a cunty thing to do. You know? So no, Nuremberg 2.0, that's way too far, dude. Way too far. You know, the thing about Nuremberg is it was a trial. There was evidence of the crimes. Like, there's not evidence that these people are responsible for death. You know, and you know, what is it, Poe's Law?
Yeah.
Poe's Law comes into effect here. You know, we haven't suffered anything close to a Holocaust. And I think that it's very, very disrespectful to the people who did lose their lives in that. To even.
Or no, that's no. Your Godwin's Law is
Godwin's Law, not Poe's.
Yeah. Poe's is satire.
Yeah. So yeah. Serena threw in a couple bucks, by the way, that I missed. Remember the last time I worked in a school, I remember walking past a classroom with a black male teacher teaching his fourth graders. Was disappointed to see this being taught in schools. Jesus. And she throws in another bucket and says, I don't like the idea of people on the left encouraging racism and sexism against the majority demographic. This idea that it's okay to punch up is very toxic and spiteful. There are black people I've seen on TV that are comfortable in victimhood. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. when it comes right down to it, we should have stuck to what, the idea that all men are created equal, and as such deserve equal rights. That's it. That's more than enough. Trying to get away from that is just nonsense. One thing I should also specify in regards to servants' question, absolutely hold China accountable if they're guilty. But what specifically they are guilty of, we don't know yet. If it was just a lab leak, we got to figure out exactly what happened there, and investigations are important. So let's wait. Let's wait and see. Let's chill the fuck out a little bit. Duke of Tumblr says, do you guys believe that the deep state conspired to undermine Trump when he was president? So I don't like the term deep state just because I don't think it's specific enough. It's too QAnon for me. So, were there absolutely bureaucrats within the government who had within the executive branch that didn't want him to succeed? Absolutely. That's what Peter Strzok was. Do I think the entirety of those institutions didn't want him to succeed? No. I mean, there were some institutions that were run much, much better under Donald Trump and preferred him to be in charge. It just depends. I think that the ones that really wanted him out pulled some really dirty shit, and a lot of them had got what ended up losing their careers because of it. Strzok being one of them. So, Derek Mozzarella says, thoughts on City of God by St. Augustine. I haven't read it in years, so I barely remember it. Hardboiled wants to know, how do you protect the media is going to take all these revelations about Fauci? A, they'll act and talk like they weren't ever simps for him. B, they'll act all shocked like it's shocking news. C, they're going to ignore it and stick their heads in the sand. Or D, some variation in between. It's going to be C. Mainstream media is it's definitely going to be C.
We're seeing it right now.
Yeah, they're going to try to bury the story, bury the lead. So, and then Kit Knightwood asked a question about CRT, but we already basically talked about that for a whole. The man behind the curtain strategy.
Mm-hmm.
They want it to be big news because it gives them big news, but also the simple fact is that they're kind of in the media is in a weird spot with it because they tried to act like it was like the Black Plague when it really wasn't, and that sort of thing, they have to double down on it or else they're going to come across as inconsistent. So, but in this case, it just ends up being consistently wrong. So, Serena threw in another buck real quick. Go ahead and say that what you were going to say real quick.
It's funny too how they continue to lie about COVID and make shit up, because I literally saw something earlier today that argued that Trump's administration was the one who covered up investigation of the lab leak theory, and because Biden is president now and is investigating it, that's a good thing. No, it doesn't make sense.
No. Anyway, Serena threw it in another bucket and said, you think there'll be a time when people get sick of this popular idea it's okay to pick on white or Asian people and make racist and sexist statements about them on social media and in media? You think the double standard will vanish? It's possible. It will take time. Like I said before, a cultural shift is what's necessary here. We need to really get back to basics, specifically when it comes to just how we treat other people. It's it's going to take time, and it's just going to take people making the decision to stop finding reasons to hate each other. If you can't love your neighbor, at least leave them alone. Have your opinions, sure, but let that be the end of it. Oh, goodness. Brian Gilmartin, so let's get to the chat, and Brian Gilmartin asks a good question, and Hatman, you'll have to tell me if you think I'm wrong with this one. He says, how can the average person stand up against critical race theory if our representatives fail to do it? That's the point where you got to get active. So the big thing that a lot of people have been doing that I've noticed is school boards.
Yeah.
Parents who don't like this sort of stuff, they've been getting on school boards and they've been voting it out. Getting rid of it. It's like, no, we're not teaching that here. And that is the first thing that comes to mind, is that so you have to get active yourself.
The problem, and again, the problem with that is you do have to approach it more with the scalpel as opposed to a blunt instrument, because where some people will see, oh, well, don't talk about America having a racist history, that's against American exceptionalism. Like, no, stop that. That's not critical race theory. Not everything is going to be CRT.
Yeah.
But there is stuff that is, and it's way more fucking obvious. That stuff, at least you can get rid of it. But it's more than just school boards. Like, you'll have to go up to like your state's departments of public instruction or your state's boards of education and shit, because it's still there too. Even if it's not in the local level, your state standardized tests have this sort of material in there too. I mean, straight up, we pulled material from Marxist.org. Straight up communist shit was in our standardized tests. Not even fucking with you. So, yeah, like it goes up a little bit further. That's short-term goals, school boards. Long-term goals, state education departments.
There you go. John Weitzel says China deserves to have its sovereignty forfeit over both COVID and the Uyghur genocide. How do you overthrow and replace the government of a nuclear-armed country? And that's the problem, isn't it?
Therein lies the question, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest. I don't know.
I don't either. It would.
I mean, my general thought is just
war to do that.
That's part of the reason I say economic sanctions. You just have to drive them into the ground.
Yeah. Well, also, would China start a war to shove off those sanctions?
Doubtful. Because how are they going to go to war with another nuclear-armed country?
Mm.
And again, guys, if YouTube is doing something, like a lag or something like that, please hit F5. We know it's been weird lately. Can't really do anything about it. It's on their end.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. Leonardo Wan wants to know thoughts on the conservative movement in New York going strong, and the only liberal member being strong is Andrew Yang. I'm not really quite sure what to say about that. I have heard that a lot of what people are starting to want is a return to the Giuliani days, which is basically right-wing law enforcement, left-wing social issues. Which, I mean, makes sense. I mean, that's when they had so much success, and their current mayor fucking sucks. We'll have to see what happens when it comes to the next election. But it's at all possible. But yeah, if you guys are having issues, please just refresh the page. I have zero control over any issues. Everything on my end is fine. So let's see here. Am I missing one?
I don't think so.
Not looking like it. Looks like I got all of them in the chat. There wasn't a lot of them. Nah. Make Sims great again. He says, "Forgive me for doing this, but I have to say it otherwise or it'll be stuck in my head for a while. Who is the biggest cuck around?" And his name is John Cena. Ba-ba-da-ba.
That's pretty good. Did we get Miguel Barrera's question?
That's a new one. Okay. How do we fight against leftists moving to more red areas of the country and turning them purple, if not outright blue?
Send them back home.
You can't.
No, not really.
I mean, it's a constitutional right to be able to move between states.
Yeah. I mean, like the only thing I can think of is just education and whatnot. But the problem is, some people don't want to listen to it, and they don't associate their own shitty politics with the reasons why the places they left were so shitty to begin with.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're seeing it a whole hell of a lot here in North Carolina.
Yep.
People are moving here from fucking New England and California and bringing their shitty politics with us, and now we're a goddamn purple state. Holy fuck. You just saw it with Georgia, too, last election.
Well, that's the thing, though, is when it comes to the presidency, a lot of states were turning purple and leaning red, or leaning blue.
It wasn't...
But...
Not just the presidency, though. Like, in Georgia's case, both their senators flipped.
That's true. But the House, not so much. Which is very interesting to me. The House, the Republicans gained.
It is weird.
And the reason that... And one thing about Georgia, though, let's be honest, the reason that Georgia flipped is because a bunch of stooges told MAGA to stay home, and then when MAGA stayed home, they wondered why MAGA stayed home.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's
you can't tell people to stay home, the election is going to be rigged, and then say, well, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. They didn't show up. All the people who didn't think it was rigged showed up to vote. Can't buy into conspiracy theories. Sidney Powell's a fucking idiot. Anyway. For anybody, I don't think anybody got... I think we got all the questions, but just in case, if somebody did not get one answered, do not double dip. Brainbox will get any unanswered questions. Give us about 15 minutes. We'll set up for the entertainment podcast. Should be a little bit more fun. And yeah, good times all around. So all that said, my name is Micah Curtis.
And I'm Alex Baldwin. And once again, your brain on CRT, not a good thing.
No. We'll see you guys very soon. Days Vault.